You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Chris Gillis, the best way to issue an ultimatum and get him to change. Ladies, welcome back to our show in which we discuss reality shows that are more than The Bachelor. And because I blew my wad and I could not stand waiting, we just fast-tracked through Love is Blind. And so today we are going to talk about The Ultimatum. So if you have not watched that show, that one, Chris Gillis, who of course is here to discuss, why don't you give, if ladies haven't watched The Ultimatum, by the way, there'll be spoiler alerts here, tell us what the premise is if someone has not watched it.
Nice. As the name of the show suggests, they start off with like 6 couples, and they are stuck in a rut. They just can't get anywhere. One of them wants to move forward to marriage, and the other one has some hangups that they just can't get around. So the person that wants to get married says, you know what, God dang it. I'm giving you an ultimatum, and you're going to go on this show. And it's so nuts. You're basically forced to break up, and you have to watch your loved one make out, hook up, hang around the other person, and figure out, this is what I want to talk at. Is the grass greener on the other side? Or were you just imagining things? Or do you bring your problems with you? Or is it really that other person's fault? So that's the premise of the show. And then eventually, after a couple weeks, you live with this other couple, this other person, and then you come back full circle and figure out, what was that me? Was I the crappy one? Or do I miss my man or woman? And can I get over it and bring them what they need and want to tie the knot and get married?
Yes. And what's interesting is the ages of these couples were between I would say 22, 3, 4. And I think we had some that were almost in their 30s, late 20s, 30s. And one person in the couple has made this ultimatum and thinks that by being on this TV show, they'll get what they want. And I thought that was really interesting. Let's start there. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, the premise, if you ask any of the people that were the ones who made the ultimatum and suggested to their partner, let's go on this show and hash it out, they all believed that they would get their partner to agree to marry them at the end. They all went into that show thinking that they would get their way. Mm-hmm. Thoughts? Mm-hmm. So
that was fascinating.
Yeah. So does that mean when we think about an ultimatum, is there some sort of mindset that we make that it's a manipulation tool that we believe will work to get what we want? Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. You're right. They were their minds were melted. They're like, wait a second. I thought for sure, especially when we'll get there in a second, but some of the other couples were like, yeah, nope, you do suck, and I like life without you. They're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
April in particular is mine, and she's so pretty, and I mean, arguably she's great on paper, but she just. I think it was cool because in some ways, Marni, you always talk about it just wasn't good people, but not necessarily good matches. And you got to kind of see how these people can, be volatile, even though they're good people, but they're whatever you call them, their ickies just don't match well with the other person. And then my favorite part, what I want to pick your brain about is, and can two people's ickies be matched up so that they're both like, hey, I like that smell. And they go, what's stench? And you go, exactly.
Well, so let me go back to the whole first idea of if you make an ultimatum, is that really a good way to sort of get what you want in a partner? And people do this around marriage, I want to get married, changing a behavior. If you don't stop drinking, if you don't stop staying out late, if you don't stop talking to your ex-girlfriend, if you don't stop blah, 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 right? Spending money this way. I'm going to leave you. So, I mean, and I think what's interesting is that in our sort of culture, I don't know why there is this belief that pain will motivate someone. And I've been thinking this a lot because I think that we have, and I do think it's true to an extent, when you think about personal development, or even the reason why you like first went to Hoffman Institute or whatever it is, like we usually like make a change in our life because we either brought pain upon us ourselves. We created like a very dramatic, painful situation. Someone left us. We lost someone. We lost a job. We lost friends. We lost money, health. And so there's this, I think it's kind of unfortunate, right? Like, and it's an interesting thing I talk to about with clients is like, is that we have to inflict pain on someone so that we will like bend them to actually change. And I don't know if I don't think that works in that context. Like what happened in your life? Like have you ever been issued an ultimatum? Did it come from pain and did it work?
Did it come from, I have, but you know what? Very seldom followed through. Ultimatums, because in the end, it's going to suck for the other person too, which was also interesting. I think like the show showed that it was hard for both people, you know, who thought, oh yeah, it'll be so cool. And they're like, wait a second, it's just, this sucks. But no, I can't say that they ever have, but I also agree with you though, Marni, that there are times when it's got to hurt enough, you know, like going Hoffman process or going therapy or, you know, whatever it is we need to do, read a book, go to AA, whatever, a change we need to make though. Yeah. The pain has to be some sort of pattern interrupt, right? To get the person to either to change on their own. I guess it's got to come internally though. But in some of these people, I noticed that they felt like they were dragged on there and they were pissed off about it. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, well, and that kind of goes to the ick thing, right? Because what's interesting is in this idea of this ultimatum, this show, right? So like let's just buy the premise that if there's enough pain, then I will change. Now, what's interesting, and I think listeners need to really think about this in the does this work? Because that's why they're listening. I think number one is like, does the person with whom you're issuing the ultimatum think they have a problem or there is a problem?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So they saying like, yeah, I do this. I'm going to lose everything if I don't get my shit together. Or are they like, you know, bitch, you're crazy. Like, I'm amazing. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Do not even threaten me.
Or maybe I love that about me, or yes, I'm whatever. If it's a, you know, super extroverted person, you're like, man, no, I'm a night owl, you know, like with the Zay and the Ray thing, right? And I love staying out late, and I'm going to do that till I can't stand up.
Yeah, exactly.
So
so I think that's a really big thing to think about is when you're giving an ultimatum, like, does the other person like actually see that it's a problem? Now in the show, I think it was a mixed bag. And what's interesting, and I think I want to talk about two things. One is the very beginning when there's picking, you know, who are you going to hook up with and see if you like them better part. Because there's two couples that are players in this game. And there's this whole scene, a setup, right, where it's basically like musical chairs. Where, you know, like everybody picks someone else to go live with for 3 weeks. And in the end, like there's a guy who realizes he doesn't have anyone to pick. He also sees that his girlfriend doesn't get picked. And suddenly they have no issue, you know, and he's like, you know what? You are amazing. Will you marry me? And then the other guy, I think that was Hunter and Alexis, and then Lauren and Nate. And the reason why they weren't getting married is because Nate wants babies and Lauren doesn't, allegedly. And without discussing the issue, he just sees that someone else is going to want to be with her, and he freaks out. And he's like, will you marry me? So it's just an interesting question, right? Like, do you think that the issue can be resolved? Do you think that the idea of like, well, there isn't actually anybody better, does that force the hand because the fantasy is no longer an option? Because I think people who have an ultimatum thrown on them and be like, nah, fuck you, forget it, often will be like, I could probably find someone better. Then they see that they can't and they're like, never mind. So tell me what you thought about those two things where the couples decided we don't want to play this game. Like, I'll give you what you want. I'll get married.
That's the first one is being the Hunter
and Alexis, right? And then Lauren and Nate was the one about the baby. And Alexis and Hunter was like, he wasn't ready. I think she said Alexis was like, I'm not going to live with you unless we're engaged. Yeah. And he was like, I'm not going to get engaged just to move forward. But then he acquiesced. Yeah.
So there's that couple. Basically, nobody wanted to do anything with her.
Right.
So obnoxious and just all about. Maybe she vocalize it, right? About how didn't she say something about how she needs like a man to make a lot of money? And kind of very superficial, and it was just gross. So ladies, if you're doing it, don't do that. I don't know how she did it on TV. Her friends let her get away with it. But the other couple I thought was more fascinating, was Nate and Lauren, right? And you see him because you see him and all the girls he's going to pick, they're all getting picked by. It's genius how the show, the order that they made it so that so you're seeing all of his options disappear, right? And then was it Colby? Was it Colby who was like, wow, she's got a great butt, and I want to hook up with her. And then he interrupts and goes, actually, I like to say something. He comes in there and stakes his claim on her. And that was, shit.
That was really intense because what's interesting. So what happens is, the guy sees, wow, someone else is actually going to date my person. And without actually resolving the issue, he proposes to Lauren, and then the character April, I think she did a great speech, and she was like, this is bullshit. Like, suddenly you guys aren't even working on your issues. And this is a really important thing. So if you're listening to figure out, should I give an ultimatum? What April says is, there's a reason underneath why this isn't working. And it's bullshit to just acquiesce without solving the issue. Right. So Lauren and Nate never talk about the baby except in an off-camera conversation. Well, it's a side conversation, which we'll talk about. And then Alexis and Hunter, he basically just doesn't want anyone else to have her. So he says, I don't need to live with you. I'll just get engaged with you and we'll get married. Right. And so, so I think this is number one, is that I liked April's point. We came to do this experiment to really figure out what our issues are. So number one is, if you do issue an ultimatum and the person is like, fine, my guess is that when you get together, those issues are still going to come up. So that's my first takeaway.
Yeah. And you talk about the non-negotiables, and that's what was so bullshit, is that, these were non-negotiables. This guy's, I must, be a father or this or that. And then, some of these people just, like you said, just acquiesce and just put it down. It's like, no. You stood up to the point, to drag them on this TV show. Then the least you can do is stand up for yourself, right? And say, no, this isn't, and not give up so easy. I thought it was really cowardly of them.
And what we find out is that Lauren and Nate, they propose and she says yes. And then they have a scene where she's like, okay, we need to go to therapy because we need to deal with this issue. So because in the end, I think April is right. If you're issuing an ultimatum, you really need to look at what's the underlying issue, and make sure that you do that.
Question for you. Internet loves them some April. And I think I chatted with you before offline and you're like, I don't know. If you were life checking Miss April and her dating for what you saw on the show, what are some of the pink, red, whatever flags that you think that it's going to make it tough for her to be in a relationship, because she came back. Remember, she was a whole new person, dyed blonde hair and blue contacts. And barely recognize her. Said she's dating somebody else now, and I think she is on social media or whatnot. But yeah, what were your thoughts on her?
Well, I liked her at first. I thought that she was a good woman, and I think that she stood by her man. I think she's also like 22. Mm-hmm. I think she has fertility issues, and she was like, I need to sort this out. I want to find my guy now, because I don't know how long it's going to take me to get pregnant, and I don't want to be doing this when I'm like 27, 28, 29, 30, because I don't know. And so in the end, I thought that she took it like a champ. I mean, I think she realized in the end, she kept wanting to reconnect with her guy through sex. And he was like, I'm not doing that. Like, you can't just jump on me. You can't just sit on my lap and like pretend like everything's going to get back to the way it is. Like, a lot of stuff came up, which leads me to my next point. So I think the hot take number one is, if you give an ultimatum and the person just, says, okay, fine, never mind, you're in denial because you're going to have issues. And so you need to deal with them. Mm-hmm. My second thing is, like, does that ultimatum, if you create it from a place of fear, does the other person really take responsibility for their stuff? Now, here's what the show did, is it put them in a relationship with someone else for 3 weeks. And Jeremy and I were like, fascinated, because the way so then in the second 3 weeks, they went back to their original partner. And so when you're watching them in the first 3 weeks with their new person, their new bae, they're like, listen, they're understanding. They say about each other, wow, you really listen. My other partner doesn't listen, or you're so calm, or you're so, you communicate so well. And they're like, yeah, and then you show them in the next 3 weeks back in their rut, and their icks totally come out.
With back to their
because they've known this person,
new bae or the old bae?
With the old bae, because they know this person for like 2 years or 2.5 years. So while they super were listening and empathetic and calm and problem solved and all these great things that happen in the first 3 weeks of dating someone, where you're like, butterflies and rainbows. And then they get back into these old relationships where the ick and those default lack of respect, or not communicating, or the story you have about your partner has not been resolved, and you default, and I think this is fascinating, right back to who you are in that relationship. And so the question is, like, is it possible to, like, if you're with the right person, are you going to be like they were with the bright, shiny new boyfriend or girlfriend for 3 weeks?
You mean can
you sustain that? If you have the right person, is the fantasy hold that, if I was with the right person, then I would never default into these old behaviors. I will always be how I was with you in those first 3 weeks. I mean, because that's the illusion, right? They're talking like, oh my God, you're so much better for me. My partner doesn't blah, blah, blah. But then they get back in with their old person, and they're just kind of a dick. So what do you think about it?
I think that's bullshit. I think just because they didn't pull out their old bag of tricks, I don't think that they really got rid of them. And you saw, and we got to see a couple snafus and some, or not snafus, but I guess maybe they're showing some of their true colors with poor communication, or being sneaky, or whatever. A few of them had some tips, even with their new fake bae. They couldn't even keep that hidden away. So no, absolutely, I think that you're wherever you go, there you are, and I think you can delay it. And that's what's so fun about thinking that the grass is always greener, is it allows us to not take responsibility and really take a hardcore look at ourselves and say, no, it's not me, it's point the finger, it's that other person, versus really take a cold hard look and listen to what that person's saying, and be curious and talk with them about it, and see if maybe what they're saying is directly true, or maybe you're just not quite understanding, and you need to rephrase it to figure out where they're coming from to have that understanding.
Yeah. And I think that that's really interesting, because, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So like, if we were to like make this like a 3-month experiment or a 6-month experiment, my guess is, right, that those people would have fallen into their same behavior patterns that they did with their original partner. I think
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Add real life in there. Add like whatever.
Yep.
The cat shitting on the floor,
Yep.
or breaking, denting your car on the way out, or all like the real nuanced little things that make you want to choke out your beloved. They didn't really have that, and it was still, yes, they were in apartments together. It was all rented and stuff, and all that. But I would have loved to see it played out a little more and just give the real life stressors of really come into play, and so you could see the people being there more, and then maybe show little clips of like whatever one partner saying why they're there, what drives them crazy, and then have the new girl or new guy screaming the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think one couple that we did get to see like a fast forward was Zay and Shanique, because Zay has this habit of staying out all night. Like that's how he had a very difficult childhood. We're like, for real, right? Zay, like, I get it. But the way he deals with his emotions is he gets drunk and he stays out all night, right? Which is, you don't want that guy for your husband. And he does that behavior. He gets really upset, and he gets in a fight with his girlfriend, Ray. And he can't handle it, so he gets drunk. And where does he go but to the new bae? He goes to see Shanique. And he is expecting what we were just talking about, for her to be like, yeah, you're right. Ray is a bitch, like, because she's seen the bright, shiny Zay, right? And what I loved about that scene was she was like, so... yeah, you shouldn't do that. Like, not to me, not to Ray. Like, you're immature. Like, you need to deal with your shit. We all get that you had a bad childhood, but you need to find a grown-up way to deal with your patterns. So don't come here and complain about your girlfriend, because what you did was not okay. And he was like, what? You're supposed to be my bright, shiny object that loves me for who I am. That's the fantasy I made up about you, right? And she doesn't have it. And I think that that's a really awesome example of, like, if you have patterns in one relationship and someone's giving you an ultimatum, don't expect that if you change partners, like in the great square dance of life, that suddenly those patterns are going to go away, because they're not. They're just going to keep getting recycled.
What do you think then is a healthy way if maybe, your partner's not getting there and you're like, man, he's just not hearing me. I need to, do some sort of pattern interrupt and tell him he needs to, we need to take some time apart or whatever, and to really make sure it's clear you're on the same page. And to really understand what is at stake here and what you need.
Well, I think that's such a great question, and I don't have like a magical answer. But what I do understand is that the longer you're in it with someone, the harder it is to break up, especially if you're already married. But for all these people, they're dating, and 2.5 years is a long time, right? But for Ray to realize, I actually don't want to be with this person who goes out all night. That's what happens, right? That night, she's tossing and turning all day, all night long in bed. He doesn't even text. And then he comes back and she says, this isn't cool. And he's defensive. He doesn't take responsibility. And in that moment, she says, you know what? I don't care how much I love you or how much you love me. This is not going to change. You're not taking responsibility, which is what we talked about early on. Right? He's not saying that it's a problem. And so she's got to peace out. And I think that was a really courageous, bold move, because after 2.5 years, and I've said this a million times, love is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So I think that if you're dating and it's 3 months or 6 months or even a year and you're consistently having a problem and the other person isn't taking responsibility and their words and actions aren't matching up for working on it, not just saying it, then you should bail. You should take a break.
And I think it's worth noting, not to shame anybody, but just to bring it. I think Ray said she hit him as well
she did
that morning, and it's never okay to hit anybody.
Yep.
But I think what she took from that is like, this relationship is so toxic. It brings me to a place where I'm ashamed of myself.
Yeah.
And it's so ugly. And I can't, and I think we both have some relationships. We've all been there where you're like, you know what? I just can't catch this person's fastballs.
Yeah, exactly.
My glove's not thick enough. I'm not built that tough. And you know what? Maybe there are people who could deal with, like you said. I do think, like, just on a side note, I do have compassion for Zay.
Yeah, for sure.
And I do think that yes, he could be, and he's a good person. But yeah, but that form of of avoidance and getting up physically leaving without saying when he's going to be back, that's just too much for many people, and especially Ray. And it hurt her so much to the point that she, like you were saying earlier, she had so much poison passed from him to her, and it just boom, and it just exchanged right back to him. She's like, gross, I can't do this anymore. So she saw herself out as well. So I would say, yeah, that's a definite sign, a good indication of when maybe the relationship is God, when you just both have that toxicity and you don't know how to healthily bottle it up or share it or just take it out and examine it without throwing it back in the other person's face, which it seemed that's what they did.
Yeah, and if you look, we talked about Love is Blind, and oh my God, what's the guy who stayed out all night that was with Ayanna and Jarrett?
Yeah.
Right? He's got that thing. Yeah. He likes to stay out and party. Yeah. That's a great example of him saying, you know what? That is not what grown-ass men who are married to women like Ayanna, like, I need to compromise. She needs to come out more. I need to rein it in a little more. I take responsibility for that. Let's work on it. And if you look at Zay, he was not that guy, right?
No,
he was not that guy.
No.
And I think if you watch both shows, you can see that same issue. And you could see how Ayanna was able to stay connected and committed to him because he took responsibility and they worked on it together. Whereas in the Ultimatum, Zay is like, no, defensive. Ray's like, I hit you. Like, we are just not good for each other. So I think in that example, she gave him an ultimatum. He thought he could get away with bad behavior somewhere else. He couldn't. Right. And then she says, I can't do this with you either. And so that's a great lesson, I think.
It is. I love that you did a little, what do they call that? A callback in comedy where you referenced something earlier from a different show. I think it just, we're talking about the Hoffman process a little bit today. And for people that haven't seen it, look it up. It's awesome. This program to, help overcome traumas from our past and, or lack of bad parents or lack of parents. And I think it just it's worth pointing out, Marni, that, you mentioned how Jarrett and Zay both had that same very couldn't be hurtful trait of just disappearing and really hurting their partners. And I think it's worth pointing out that how fucking hard relationships are. That even that Jarrett, for example, he's got like a complete family. His dad's a minister, and he's got this awesome supportive mom. And we're still idiots, and we still mess it up. So it's like, holy moly! No wonder Zay had like no examples at all. Right. But when we gathered, so it's just like, oh my God! I guess just how much grace we need as men, and patience and understanding, and and it takes a while to get there. So I don't know, if your man's driving you nuts, give him a chance.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Hard. Yes, you are. Okay, let's talk about this ultimatum. So April, I'm sorry. I want to talk about Colby and Madeline because this is another issue. Right? And so Jesus. Madeline is also 21 too, very young. He's the same age. They've dated since college. He's obsessed with her, in love with her, thinks she's the most amazing thing. He's made the ultimatum. She's like, I'm so not ready. They live together. They have puppy together, maybe 2 dogs. So they're pretty committed. They've been together for a couple of years. And she goes with this other guy, Randall, and she's like, oh my God, he's amazing, right? Randall is showing up his best self. And she's basically saying, Colby's a jerk, but here's what's interesting. Randall will not have sex with Madeline. And that is how she gets validation and connection and feels connected to her power. And so because she does not have that power dynamic, and there's not this passion and connection thing, they really have to like just be and talk. And she is forced to sort of deal with her stuff. And I think she looks at it. Now, what's interesting though is that Colby in this experiment, because of musical chairs, doesn't end up with anyone that he is physically connected to or doesn't pursue a romantic relationship, right? So off camera, we hear hearsay for sure, because we never saw this, that he went out to a club and basically found some girls so that he could like hook up, be interested, fully do the experiment. And Madeline finds out and she loses her shit. And my favorite scene of all time of like a guy taking a lot of shit from a group of women is Colby goes to like meet up with Madeline and her friends, and they all turn against him and tell him like, you're a loser, you're such a shithead, you're like, you know, and they're basically like, fuck you, no fuck you, motherfucker. Like, I mean, literally everything that you should never say to someone you love, right? The toothpaste has been squeezed out. The question I want to ask you is there, and I'm sure the internet went insane with this, but you know, some of you like, if a guy said that to me, or if I would never take this person back. And my question is, when you are committed, are there certain things that you allow, that you forgive, that you understand, that you work through? Is there such a thing as that rule of like, if someone ever did this to me, I would never? Is that possible in a long-term relationship? Now, I'm not talking physical violence, by the way, people. I'm not talking, you know, because that's, I mean, I can't argue around that one. I don't even think that's debatable. But there's some emotional abuse going on here with these kids. And they are kids, in my opinion, because they're in their early 20s.
By the way, let's just get out. You don't think any of them are old enough to be married, do you?
No, I don't. I think that if like it's 50-50 either way. But you know, Madeline and Colby get married in like 30 seconds. I think they're 22. Like 3 days before she was like, fuck you. And then they're pregnant. I mean, but I don't know. Like, I'd love to be wrong 20 years from now, you know, the reality reunion show of all time. They're together.
All right. I know I'd put you on the spot there. I just want to say I am fiercely fascinated by the personalities of Madeline and Colby. And if there's any listeners out there doing your psychology dissertation, dude, please do it. Do it on them and share it with us. There is so much interesting stuff going on with how he is and his narcissism and her drinking. And I'm like, what? And the things she says. So did you say, I remember her going off even at Randall, who was like sweet as pie. She even like said something to him because, like you said, she was pissed off because he's not showing her the love language, I guess, enough a physical touch. And she like said some nasty things to him. And so remind me, so just set the scene up. So Colby comes and visits her friends, and all of her
they're
friends
at a bar, and I think she's had a lot of cocktails, and he's just like, hey guys, you know, and they're like, you're such a schmuck, I can't believe you did that. And he's like, well, she went through my phone and my Apple Watch,
baby. It's always the
Apple Watch. And they just treat each other horribly. And Madeline drinks too much and says a lot of stupid shit. And, you know, I guess people are going to hate me. I don't really see Colby as a narcissist. I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Hot take, Marni.
I think that he's really confident. I think that one thing that he said, which I think is really interesting about long-term relationships. So take it or leave it. You can think I'm completely insane. He says to Madeline, I put up with you. Like I love you for who you are. And I love you even when you get drunk and say stupid shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he meant it. And I don't think that's like narcissistic.
No,
like I'm
no.
so great, like I just think he's like, like, and then Randall is like, chill, honey, right? Like, again, the fantasy, right? Like, butterflies and rainbows guy doesn't put up with it. He's like, that's not okay. Like, this isn't like, I'm trying to have a conversation with you, and Madeline can't do it. And I think that for better or worse, Madeline and Colby have a dramatic thing, but they get each other and they put up with each other. And so for that reason,
so they kind of break it, right? They're like breaking all the rules and like all the things. Like, babe, nobody should talk to each other the way they talk about to answer your question. But he is so, like, I guess to go back to my analogy, she throws such fucking fast heat balls, but he's got the thickest glove and the thickest skin. And I don't know if he's, because like you said, he's a narcissist and nothing sticks to him and he doesn't really hear her. I don't know what's going on, but they do have such a fascinating where she just fucking whip it quick, mean, sharp tongue, and just eviscerates him. And then also worth pointing out, we've always said this before, is don't get advice from your perennial single best friends, right? Who are just fucking doing like Jerry Springer, just like
exactly,
crazy and cheering you on into battle. That's not who. That shouldn't be that. That's not your peanut gallery. But there does seem to be that they do work. To answer your question, and I think they have been together so long that the words that they don't seem to bite as much, because he knows it in the morning when she sobers up, which she's seems to do pretty quick. Because good Lord, I don't know how these people do it.
I know.
It's a young 20-year-old livers, but they bounce back the next day. Whereas, God, I'd be hurting. And they're back by the pool having saying, oh, what a crazy night or whatever it is. Because if you don't remember it, you don't have to apologize about it. I don't know.
And so I think that's a really interesting thing, is like they have this dance and this understanding, and it seems to work with them. And I think it's like, if we go back to Love is Blind, it's almost like Danielle and Nick.
Nick,
yeah, right, where he's like, you know what, my girl be cray, but I love her. And I think there's just this, because we're committed. And so I think that, and we don't know what's happening off camera, obviously, right? Like, allegedly, Colby and Madeline, like, they get married and then they hash out all the issues. Maybe they go to therapy. I don't know. They're having a baby. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think in terms of that ultimatum project, the test or the example is, it really showed them that they each have their own sort of flavor of like acceptance for each other. That they may not find that elsewhere. And so for that reason, Madeline is like, you know what? I can be crazy. I say stupid shit. I will or won't work on it, but I know that Colby's going to be there for me. And so they decide to get married. And so in that case, I think the ultimatum experiment really showed that.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we saying to look within and figure out what is our favorite flavor of cray? Because we all have, I think we kind of all do. I think there's, God, isn't that funny? I have so many friends. I'm like, how do they do it? And they're like, and I'll say something and they're like, do what? And I'm like, what I just said. They're like, oh, no big deal. I'm like, what? No big deal. Like, no, their version of, staying out to 8 o'clock in the morning, like Zay did. Some people are just like, no big deal. And they get it. And fuck, you're right. They do seem to get it. And it makes my mind break, because it's like against everything we learn and are taught in general. And it's like, man, just got to find your flavor of cray.
You have to find your flavor of cray. Okay, so let's talk about, gosh, it was such a long episode, but, well, I'm trying to think. Do you think we should, now let's keep going. Okay, so last thing is I want to talk about April and Jake. Because I like, this guy's been in, and this is a really great example of non-negotiables. He's been in the military. He's been home. He's been out. He's been deployed. He's been back. They've been dating. She stood by her man. This woman probably sent him cookies like every week with a love note while he was in the military. Family loves her. Family thinks
Totally.
she's the best thing ever. She thinks this ultimatum thing is going to kick him into gear and he's going to realize how amazing she is. What I think the ultimatum showed, and this is what she said she wanted it to reveal, they do not have the same relationship goals right now. She fully wants to settle down, have babies, get a condo. And he is like, I just got my freedom. I served my country.
Yeah.
I want to travel. I want to get more financially stable. I want to build my career. Like, I cannot give you what you want right now, even though we love each other. But when you add that in, and that we have some fundamental relationship patterns that are unhealthy, I'm not willing to stick it out and work on it, because I think in the end we don't want what each other wants right now.
My hot take was that exactly, he just got out of the military and he's been told what to do for so long.
Yep.
And my take is that April was a continuation of his mother. They were like fucking identical twins sitting there, and the way they talked, they finished each other's sentences. They were like sisters. And I think there was just some of that, as the saying goes, some of that mother's milk just transitioned from his mom's teeth to April's teeth. And it worked until, and I think he does want to, like you said, explore and become his own man. And I think she's a great person. But because she was just so controlling, and she's got everything planned out for him. And I think he just wants that freedom and that acceptance, that quietness. That I think kind of what he was digging with Ray, as she was so silent, in not necessarily a great way, but she never said anything. Whereas April always is chatting away and giving her opinion, strong opinion on things. And I think that's why I think he just needs to go out, like you said, do his own thing and travel the world and be his own man for a while.
I think we're in agreement on that. So let's talk. So Ray, ends up not dating Jake, but that doesn't work out. Ray, we find out, is bisexual. I think Ray realizes that in leaving her relationship with Zay, she has to work on herself before she can be in a relationship. I think that's an amazing gift. Last, let's talk about Shanique and Randall, because I think they were probably the most mature, in the end. What they learn is Shanique learns, like, I need a grown-up man. Zay is not that. Like, he's fun and he's cute, but no, I'm not. I need someone who's more man-involved. And I think Randall realizes how mature Shanique is, even though she's young. Because when you stand her next to Maddie, he was just like, you know what? This woman has her shit together. She's smart. Yeah. She's articulate. She might be bossy and controlling, as a lot of type A women are, but he is ready to really appreciate what she brings. And again, they seem that they have that commitment and acceptance of who each other are, and they realize that you might find someone sexy, you might find someone hot, you might have great chemistry or passion, but what are you really looking for in a relationship that's going to be sustainable? And I think in that ultimatum experiment, they both realized that they had what they were looking for.
I was a little upset. I kind of to touch back what we said a second ago, I felt that the issue, I don't know if you ever got to it, but I felt that the thing that he really needed to change. I felt like she was over controlling, and I don't know, didn't trust him and respect him as much. And I was like, man, I wish he would have taken a beat, opened up his Instagram DMs and saw the 10,000 women who want to date him, because everybody on the internet was like, oh my God, this guy is like the perfect man ever, for so many reasons. And so I just hope they don't, just go back to, the old comfortable ways of being, and hopefully the 3 weeks or whatever it is was long enough for them to change, because I do think has a ton of potential. There's still the pettiness, and when she was having to be right versus tough in a relationship, right? I feel like their conflict areas could still be worked out, but I don't that's my. I wasn't stoked on her. She wasn't my favorite. Although
No,
I do appreciate what you say.
Yeah, I think what I realized too from doing a little internet research is that they're not engaged, but I think they've moved in together and they're working on their issues. And she realized that she needs to listen better. And Randall needs to communicate like his own feelings and not just make her happy. And so what they said is it showed them the things they both needed to work on and what we need to get out of their partners. That's a quote from Randall. So I think that they're moving in together and they have their little house in Austin, Texas. But I really think that they learned very specific things about where they were falling down in the relationship. And so it did show that, right? Shanique's like, I'm not going to be bossy. I'm going to listen. And Randall's like, I've just been trying to make you. And I think a lot of men do this. And women get mad that they're like being beta males or whatever, but they're just like, are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy now? Does this make you happy? And then they don't have any of their own needs. And then later they get really resentful and it causes a lot of mistakes. So I think Randall's like, you know what? I need to start like setting boundaries, getting my needs met and talking about what I want. And so I think that I think that ultimatum worked for them.
Yeah.
You agree? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I was thinking, it's like you teach her the art of pumping the brakes because she is a strong, powerful woman, and I think he's gonna have to learn to really hold his to hold his place when he is choose his fights carefully and wisely. I was going to say, I'm going to take away, ladies, if you're going to give an ultimatum and switch it up, make sure that the person your guy dates sucks, because they'll come running back to you and be like, man, good Lord, she really is great.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think my overall takeaway of should you make an ultimatum, is really, make sure that you the person is like in it to win it and is taking responsibility. I think you have to have the same relationship goals. And like April and Jake, like, just marry me or not isn't going to solve the bigger issues. Like, are we looking for the same thing right now? I think giving an ultimatum and taking a break can really show you like that wherever you go, there you are. And you have these issues and you need to bring those back to the relationship. And so I think it can work in that way. And then I think sometimes, there are people who just are like, oh my God, I don't want to lose you. And like Nate and Hunter, they'll just like drop on one knee and be like, okay, we'll work it out later. Let's work it out after. I just don't want anyone else to have you. And I think that is the fantasy of how it's supposed to go when you issue an ultimatum. And often it doesn't. So it's not my favorite way to resolve conflict, but sometimes that's what it takes.
Well, and that's just that dating with that scarcity, afraid to lose. That's the opposite of, dating with dignity, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Dirty.
What are we going to talk about next? We'll come back. We have we'll figure something out. Another reality show, another show. But it's been super fun doing our little Love is Blind and our ultimatum recap. Chris, any last thoughts in this Bachelor shower that we just took? We're all cleansed and free from the Bachelor. What is it?
Yeah, I heard I heard Love is Blind, Brazil and Japan's really good too. So,
okay, maybe.
Throwing it out there.
All right, ladies, whether you are being given an ultimatum or whether you're thinking of giving one yourself, before you do it, make sure you life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to dwdvip.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.